"Oh, son, you've arrived," Elena rejoiced. Her son rarely stopped by, and every time for her it was a huge pleasure. She raised him alone. His father died in an accident at work when the boy was young. Eudokia tried to strictly educate her son, but she spoiled him as best she could. She didn't marry again, although there were candidates. She loved her Peter and could not imagine anyone else around. So they lived with their son. After high school, he entered a technical school, and then he returned to his native village. He was not drafted into the army because of bad health. At first, the young man was really upset about this. He wanted to be like his father, but it was quickly forgotten in business and worries. Elena was still waiting for him to bring home a potential bride. Some girls from their village were in her mind, as there were a lot of good ones around. But the son chose a woman from another village. Elena didn't like her, but she decided not to argue with her son. Since then, the son hasn't been home much. So she only saw her grandchildren a year ago, and then not for long. The daughter-in-law didn't want to talk with her mother-in-law, and Eudokia did not insist. The main issue was that her son was happy. One day, he showed up without warning at Elena's house. Michael was at her door, with his cap in his hands. "Well, hello, Mother. I'm not alone. Look," said the son, leading forward a thin boy with glasses and a backpack over his shoulders. "Oh dear, you brought me a grandson. Is it Jack or Alex? I can't recognize him without glasses," said Elena, excited. Michael sat down on a chair and sighed heavily. "So put him on. This is Eugene, my illegitimate. Do you remember Annie and I parted ways for a year? So I got along with Daisy then. So he was born." Elena tugged Michael. "How could you say that in front of a child? What were you thinking? He is still small to know about your not noble life," said Elena, outraged. "Eugene, you go to another room and watch TV while we talk with your dad here," she continued. The boy silently took off his shoes and went into the room. Then Elena quietly asked Michael, "How does Annie know about him?" Michael shuddered. "And how do you think, Mother? If she finds out, she will kick me out of the house which I built with my own hands. I could not let that happen." Elena remembered how her son built it. When Annie kept complaining without helping, Elena sighed. "Why are you so unlucky? Not a man, but a jerk. Under Annie's heel all your life. How else did you manage to have an illegitimate son? It's just crazy. And why did you bring him to me? If Annie finds out, we'll both be screwed," said the mother. Elena already imagined how her daughter-in-law would be bawling at her doorstep, not minding their neighbors. She could always find a reason for conflict, and she would definitely find it in this situation. "Daisy is such a snake. She got married to a new boyfriend. She went on a trip to the south for a month. So she called me and said, 'Take your son wherever you want. At least take him home.' Am I out of my mind? I have a wife. She will kick us out together. But Daisy told me if I don't want to do it this way, she'll bring Eugene's birth certificate to Annie. And that's all. That's the end. Annie barely forgave me for my relationship with Daisy. She didn't talk to me for 6 months. So I decided to let Eugene stay with you for a month, Mom. And then I'll come and pick him up," explained Michael. As he was saying that, he didn't look at his mother. Elena just shook her head. "That's how you were as a child, and that's how you remained. Whatever you do, Mom helps. What should I do? Leave the boy? But are you sure he's definitely yours? He looks strange to me," said Elena to her son. Michael waved his hand, saying, "Do not doubt. Daisy is an old goat, but she's a faithful woman." They fell silent when suddenly Elena jumped up. "Why am I sitting? Let me feed you after your long trip." Michael stood up. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I have to go. Annie's waiting at home, and I lied saying I went to the city for spare parts. Feed Eugene, please, and bye." Eudokia hugged her unlucky son to say goodbye. "Well, God bless you, my dear," said Elena. Meanwhile, the kid sat peacefully on the couch and watched the news on TV. He did not dare to change the channel, although he saw the TV remote control. Elena looked at the thin boy frozen like a statue. "How could this happen?" she thought. "Eugene, let's go eat." She said it affectionately, and the kid shuddered at first, and then got up and slowly followed. While Elena poured soup into a bowl, she looked at her grandson. Still, there are traits of a son, although she didn't notice them at first. So he sits calmly and pulls the tablecloth with his hands, just like Michael did as a child. Yes, his profile is almost the spitting image of her son. "Now you can eat, honey," she said it, placing a plate in front of Eugene. "But what about you, lady? We're supposed to eat together." She didn't expect this. She really forgot about herself. But how can one not forget under such circumstances? "Now I will join you. I'm your grandmother. You can call me that. No more lady. Deal?" asked Elena. The boy nodded his head in agreement and ate quietly without looking up from his plate. "You want some more?" She asked this with pity, seeing how quickly he ate everything. "No, thank you," replied the boy, taking his plate to the sink. "Leave it. I'll do the dishes," replied the grandma. "I can do it myself. Honestly, I won't break anything." He said it without raising his eyes up to Elena. She was a little surprised, but let the boy wash the plate and spoon by himself. "Good job. Go play outside and take a walk while I cook dinner. By the way, what do you have in your backpack?" The boy reluctantly answered, Things. Clothes. Will you wash it by yourself too, or will I have to?" For the first time, the boy looked up at her with frightened eyes. "But I can't. My mom always did laundry. She taught me how to wash dishes, but not how to wash my clothes." "Well, that's okay. Go to the yard, take a walk, and I'll look and rinse what's dirty," replied the woman. As he left, she began to sort out the contents of the backpack. 2 t-shirts, pants, and a pair of shorts. After having soaked the items in a basin, she set off to work on a cherry pie. Suddenly, she heard a scream coming from the street outside. Elena jumped out without even washing off her hands covered in flour. "What happened?" Eugene screamed and held on to his leg. "The goose bit me. It's so painful," replied the boy, crying. Tears rolled in clusters from his eyes. "Why did you go near them? They're grazing over there, and you were in the yard," she asked, looking at the red spot on his leg. "Just wanted to see them." "Have you ever seen geese?" "I saw them before, but never saw them up close," replied the boy. And then Elena remembered that Daisy was from the city. "Well, let's go inside. I'll take care of that." After dinner, Elena laid him on the sofa. For some reason, she couldn't fall asleep for a long time. So she thought, what kind of life is this? She would never send her Michael to someone else's grandmother. Eugene's mom is probably still that goofy. She doesn't think about the child, only about herself. And then the grandma heard a sob. She leaned in closer to be sure, and the boy was crying. She quietly approached him. "What's wrong, sweetheart? You don't like it here? This month will pass and your mother will take you back home soon enough." The boy threw back the covers and whispered, sobbing, "She won't. I heard her and Uncle Bob say that when they arrive, they will send me to some kind of boarding school, and they will only take me away for the holidays. But I do not want it to go that way. I was happy at home with my mother until this Uncle Bob came. And Michael doesn't need me. He doesn't even call me by my name. You're a good grandmother, but you don't need me either." The little boy cried harder. Elena hugged his thin frame. "You don't need to cry, Eugene. I will not let you. Do you want me to talk to your mother and you will live with me? We have a good school and teachers here. You and I will go for mushrooms, berries. We're going to milk our cow. You're so frail, and so much strength is added from fresh milk. Don't trust me? I'll introduce you to Patrick tomorrow. He is a good boy, and buffed by milk like a bun." The boy hugged his grandma around her neck. "Yeah, that would be great. But wouldn't you cheat?" Elena gently kissed him on the top of his head. "Of course not," she replied. The month flew by. Elena told Eugene how to take care of a cow and what berries you can eat. He was looking forward to when it would finally rain and they would go for mushrooms. In the meantime, a neighbor boy was talking about life in the village to Eugene. The boy had a blush on his face. One day, Michael arrived when Eugene and Elena were in the garden. He came in and saw his mother and his son watering cucumbers. They didn't notice him right away. "Dear, continue watering the plants, and I'll go and talk to your dad." She already knew what Michael would say to her, and she also knew what she would answer. "Mom, this is such a thing," mumbled her son. "I know everything. Daisy doesn't need a son, and neither do you. I will not give my grandson to an orphanage as long as I am alive, so he stays with me. Decide as you wish, but make sure I have all the documents tomorrow. He has to go to school in a year." Michael was delighted and promised that he would settle everything with Daisy. The next day, he brought the child's documents, as well as all their things and some toys. A month later, Daisy visited. Eugene was delighted at first, and then he took his grandmother tightly by the hand. He was sent to watch cartoons, and when he returned, his mother was gone. Years have passed. Daisy sometimes came, brought gifts, but she did not linger. Bob always hurried her out of the car. Michael appeared, but rarely. Annie found out about Eugene and decided that her husband was not to blame, but her, Elena, because, according to her, she does not need her own hands, and all sorts of stray people are just right. Elena did not say anything in response. It was useless. She could try to defend her point of view, but who needs it? Other grandchildren were not brought to her like this before, so she did not lose anything. From a flimsy boy, Eugene grew into a strong man. He was the grandmother's first housekeeper. He graduated from school well and entered the technical school as a carpenter. He has always enjoyed working with wood. And after the technical school, he went into the army, like his grandfather, about whom he heard so much from his grandmother. This morning, Elena prepared her grandson's most favorite meal and kept looking out the window. Then, a young soldier entered the house and called for her softly. "Grandma, I've arrived. Where are you?" She ran out of the room and hugged him very tight. "Eugene, my dear, will you go to your mother?" He put down his fork and asked in surprise, "To which mother? The one who left me and brought me knickknacks once a year? No, I won't go. My mother and grandmother is you, and this is final." And then he calmly sat down to eat, gobbling up everything quickly, just like the day he first crossed the threshold of this house. And Elena furtively wiped away a tear. What a joy that she has such a grandson. Joy and help in old age.